Hey everybody, welcome to the very first episode of Lonehammer Daily. I'm your host, Randy Glenn. Today is December 21st, 2014, and today's episode will be all about rule questions in regards to demons, and more specifically, Slaanesh Daemons. So before we get too in-depth, I want to take a time out to thank our episode sponsors. First one is Lone Wolf GT, which is a tournament held here in Dallas, Texas in March. You can find out more information at lonewolfgt.com or follow them at Facebook at facebook.com/lonewolfgt. And our second sponsor, the local store where we mainly plan and run some of our tournaments out of, is the Texas Toy Soldier. And you can find all the information on them at texastoysoldier.com. That's TEXASTOYSOLDIER.com, where you can find all of their merchandise at 25% off. And they also will order you product and give you the same discount. So it's a great deal. Go ahead, check them out. Texas Toy Soldier, and let them know the guys at Lonehammer sent you there. So into our topic for the day. Why demons and why Slaanesh Daemons? Well, first of all, any of you who listen to the show know that I am a huge fan of Slaanesh Daemons, as that is the army that I mainly play most of the time. And because I like Slaanesh Daemons so much, and there are so many rules that get misconstrued wrong a lot of the times, I figured I would do an episode, and our very first one, clarifying some of those misunderstandings that when I started playing Warhammer, I got wrong. And as I became more experienced, I noticed that other people got wrong as well. When I first started playing Warhammer in March, I went to a tournament, and I basically learned the rules by kind of reading it and playing. I suspect that most players out there learn the rules by playing the game, reading up on stuff, because in all honesty, with everything going on in life between family and work, memorizing that huge rule book when you're first starting to play a game can be kind of daunting. And nobody wants to go to a GT and have somebody pull out the rule book every 5 seconds to go, So some of these things that I'm going to talk about, hopefully they'll clarify and make your home games easier. Maybe make some of your GT experiences where you play demons a little bit easier, and whatnot. The first thing I'd like to talk about are the marks of Slaanesh, and what does it mean as a demon player. The mark of Slaanesh grants a model that is Mark Slaanesh, gives them the model, armor piercing, and also hatred for demons of Khorne, with the mark of Khorne. So how does that affect you, or what does that really mean? Most people are like, well, demons have armor piercing. Whoop-de-doo. Okay, I get it. Fiends have armor piercing. I get it. The Seekers have armor. And I understand that everybody understands that as well. However, sometimes questions get arose by the Lash of Slaanesh, which is the whip that the Keeper can take that has a 12-inch ranged shooting attack. Also a Soul Grinder. They can take a Stone Thrower, a Bolt Thrower, and they can take a Flamethrower. And they also have the Demon Bone Claw, which is like a hand cannon. While Strength 10, usually armor piercing doesn't matter. The Lash and all of the weapons that the Soul Grinder have are all armor piercing. And why? Because the model itself, as a Slaanesh demon, has armor piercing. That means everything that touches it has that rule. Okay? So some people are like, no, it doesn't get that. Then why wouldn't the Razor Standard, why doesn't that give archers it? Because it specifically says that the Razor Standard, it gives you armor piercing in close combat. This doesn't have that narrow construction of construed of the rule that armor piercing is just in combat. So we'll move to something that people get wrong a lot, or at least there's a lot of discussion about it, and that is acquiescence and cacophonic choir. Now most people know what cacophonic choir does, and cacophonic choir, when it hits you, It does 2d6 worth of hits, and then it wounds you on a 4-up. Everybody gets that part of Cacophonic. It's that second part of it, the Always Strikes Last and the Random Movement d6 that throw people off a little bit. Now, the Random Movement d6 and the Always Strikes Last, Acquiescence does that as a hex, and Cacophonic does that as a hex. But Cacophonic, you actually have to do wounds to a model or to the unit for that to take effect. So if somebody had a 5-up ward save and they did a ton of wounds to you, then it would not matter because it wouldn't matter because you wouldn't have random movement and always success because you take the wound. However, there is some debate with people over how that rule is applied, and what I mean is the random movement d6. If you have a unit, excuse me, like a Doom Wheel or a Snotling Pump Wagon, if you have a Hell Pit Abomination, and I were to Acquiescence or get Cacophonic off, do enough wounds not to kill the model, what would your movement be? Well, it would be d6 inches. And some people are like, no, that's wrong, you're wrong. When I have random movement, you can't mess with my movement. That is what my movement says. But think about it like this. It's a hex, first of all. And anytime you put a hex on something, you're changing it. You're making it different. So I'm basically taking a pencil, if you will, or a marker, and I'm erasing your random movement 3d6, or 4d6, or 2d6, whatever your model has, and I'm replacing it with what my random movement says you are. It's just changing it for the turn. This is kind of how it goes, and I understand how much it sucks, and people hate that about Slaanesh, that they control the movement phase, but it is what it is. So you just kind of move on and live and learn. The last thing I want to talk about is going to be the Fiends of Slaanesh. And I talk about Fiends of Slaanesh here because a lot of tournaments you go to, if you play a demon player, you're not going to see Fiends. You're going to see a lot of Beasts of Nurgle. You might see Blood Crushers and an all-corn army, but very rarely do you see Fiends of Slaanesh. It's just not a popular choice at the moment. But Fiends have a Musk, and that Musk gives the model, whatever model they're touching, -1 to their weapon skill and -1 to their initiative. It's important that you know this because they don't have the restriction of bringing it down to just a 1. They can take it down to a 0. So it would be very bad to have your initiative and or weapon skill dropped all the way down to 0. And most people don't realize that. They just kind of go, okay, you dropped me by 1, I'm at 1, whatever, who cares? But that's not the case always. So it's important that you know exactly what they do. And lastly is one that a lot of people don't know because it doesn't get played a lot, is the Exalted Locust for Slaanesh. And it's 60 points. It's a 60-point item, and it doesn't get used a ton, but I wanted to cover it because I wanted people to understand exactly what it does and how great it is. It's called the Exalted Locust of Beguilement. And here's what it says. Challenges issued by this model can't be refused, and you, not your opponent, choose which enemy accepts. Also, any enemy in base contact with this model or a model in her unit has its initiative reduced to 3 to a minimum of 1 until the end of the phase. So yeah, you combine that little dandy with some Fiends, and you have a recipe for disaster for a lot of things. But it doesn't get used a lot, and the big part of that one is the challenge part. Now, it says that challenges can't be refused, and I get to pick the challenge. Everybody understands that on the first go round, this model charges in, I make a challenge, I pick this, you fight me. But on your turn, you still issue a challenge. So if the model with this locust in here, they still get to choose whether or not to accept it. If you decide not to have a challenge, they then get to do it again, and it repeats on, so on and so forth. But it's important that people get that, because sometimes you read that rule to people that the way it gets said by a lot of tournament players is, oh, I get to challenge and you can't refuse it, blah, blah, blah. And so people think that every round that person gets to issue the challenge right off the bat. So I think that's going to just about do it for our very first episode. If you would like to get in touch with myself or any of the other Lonehammer guys, we have an email. It's lonehammer2014@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Lonehammer Podcast. And you can search for us on YouTube, which would be Lonehammer, which is also my Demonic Orchard YouTube channel. You can check out our battle reports and all of our episodes and any other discussions on that channel. And I also want to give one more shout out to our music of the day, which is Kalimba by Mr. Scruff. So here it is again. You guys have a nice night, and we'll see you all tomorrow.